Hello. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the delay. I was trying to set up here, and I didn't have everybody's email. So someone was pointing out that it's a little hard for you to ask questions since perhaps I'm on the slides and I can't see what you're texting, and so what I'm going to try and do is perhaps have a separate monitor. Actually, you know what? Do you all have my phone number? If I have 978-761-5742. If you have a question, just text me there real quick, and so I know to come back and read the questions on the texting over here. I don't have another monitor that I can use. So if you have questions, just please text me real quick. I'll come back and see if you have been chatting and asking different things, and I'll know to come and look at this, okay? And just a little big blurb, just saying your question, and I'll come back and see this. All right, is everybody here? I hope. Anybody in Seattle? No? Okay. All right, so I hope everybody's here. Welcome, everyone. Sorry for the delay a little bit. I was running between classes and also I was setting up here. So what I was thinking of doing, just to get you started with the project, I was thinking that I should give you a demo on how you would go about getting started creating a web application using Java. Looks like most of you have told me that you would prefer to create some kind of web application. You'll try to convince some of you to perhaps do a phone application, but nobody has taken up that challenge. But some of you are going to try out maybe Node.js and MongoDB. That's great. I will do a demo on how to do that as well a little later. But since most of the classes looks like somebody is not able to join. Harshad Satha is not able to join. Do we have anybody there that can share a connection? Aren't most of you at Seattle? Is everybody at their house listening to this? Okay. Yeah, perhaps we're going to have to make a policy that perhaps a larger amount of students should go to the Seattle office, so that we leave more open connections for everybody else to join. All right, so let me get started then. As I was saying, I'm going to demo how to get started on your web project. First, I'll demo how to use Java. Perhaps a couple of weeks from now, we'll do Node.js, MongoDB, and perhaps Angular. But now we'll use Java today. Okay. All right. Any question before I start? Any comments? Okay. All right. Let me get started. Let me share my screen. Let's see. Share screen. I want to share the entire screen. Okay. I hope everybody sees that. You see, I'm trying to make it so that I can maybe read the comments here. All right, so let's see. To get started, I created several links here for your website, for your section, right? For this course, and here are some of the URLs that you're going to need. One of them is you're going to need to go to download the IDE for the framework that we're going to be using, right? So the one we're going to be using is Eclipse. If you go to Eclipse website, you can download from here, and there's several versions to work on various languages, on PHP, on Java, on C++. The one we're going to be using is this one, called Eclipse IDE for Java EE developers. Okay, it's a pretty big IDE. But if you download it, please install it, and when you run it, you'll get something like this. I'm gonna start mine. Maybe you already have it running. I already have one running, but I'm gonna stop it. I'm gonna restart it. I'm gonna restart a different workspace, a brand new workspace, so that you get more or less the experience of what you would see when you start brand new. Okay, so I'm going to have here, I'm going to go to lectures, browse here, I'm going to go to lectures, and I'm going to create one Eclipse for your section. I'll create one for section 3. Okay. And under there, wait, what? I create section 3? I thought I did. Lectures. Section 3. Say OK. Right, let's say OK. You see? Yeah, I'll say OK. So it's going to stop. The IDE is going to quit, and it's going to restart at that particular location. I also have a database running here, but I'm going to stop it so that you can see it, how it works. I'm going to stop MySQL. Can you all see my screen? Let me see. Where's the? All right, everybody can see my screen still?
Yes.
I have a screen? Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, here's the IDE that it came up. There it is. It started. It says welcome. It's brand new, and we're going to be creating web applications in here. All right. Okay. I'm going to leave that for a second. Something else that you need to download. Let's look at the other things that you need to download. Here you also need to download a version of some server, right? I chose Tomcat, but you could use JBoss or WebSphere or WebLogic or whatever. Okay, I chose Tomcat is the most lightweight server that I could find. Well, actually, there are a couple more that are even lighter. You can download it from here. You can go to Tomcat 7, and then down here there's a jar file that you can download. And then you unzip. It's a zip file that you can unzip to your local directory. And I unzipped it to my C drive under C, and I put it under here where it says Tomcat. There it is, under Tomcat. So under Tomcat I have bin and so on and so forth. So I have bin, and here are the executables for Tomcat. I also downloaded MySQL community server. So this is the server that I'm going to use, right? But you can just as well use any other server. You can use Postgres, or if you prefer SQL Server. There's drivers for each one of them. So I'm going to use this one, community server. So if you go there, it's a community server. You can download for Microsoft or for Mac OS or any other platform that you might have. right? So anyway, so you download it's free, and you install it or you unzip it. I unzipped it to this local directory under C. There it is, MySQL. Under there's bin, and in here the only thing that we need here is the MySQL D, which is a server. There's somewhere here. There it is, MySQL D, to start the server. Okay. Let me start it. So there it is. I'm under MySQL bin directory, and I'm going to start MySQL D somewhere in here. Where is it? Where is it? D. There it is. MySQL D. I'm going to run it, and now the server is running, and it's listening at a particular port. Now you can configure this to run as a service as well, so that it's always on. You don't have to restart it every time. I don't have it running as a service, right? Only when I need it, I start it. I use it mostly for academic purposes. I do have SQL Server running all the time. All right, so I'm going to minimize that. Another thing that you're going to need for the development environment is the drivers that allow Java to talk to MySQL. For that, I have a link here that if you go there, the driver is generally called connector J, and there's several versions. There's one dedicated for Windows. I would prefer to use a platform independent. This one can be used for both, for Mac OS or for Windows. And basically, it's a jar file, and when you unzip it, you can copy it to your local drive. I put all my jar files that are used for the database, for connecting the database. I put it all under JDBC. Under here, I have several drivers, several to talk to SQL Server, Postgres, MySQL. Okay, so I have several jar files. So each one of these jar files is for a different database. Okay, so that contains the classes that can talk to the various databases. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's go back to my IDE. Where's my IDE? There it is. So in my IDE, I want to be able to create a web application. So let's create a simple web application. To do that, you go to New, Dynamic Web Project, and I want to create an application that is kind of like an online IDE that allows me to create online applications, or like phone applications or mobile applications online, right? So I'm going to call it Online IDE. Okay, and I need to tell it, where is this web application going to be targeted? Where is this going to be running? What server is going to be running? Right now, it doesn't have any server configured. So we're going to configure a server. I'm going to go to runtime. You need to do this only one time, right? If you already had done this before, we wouldn't have to. We could just choose a server that we want to deploy at. But right now, since it's a brand new environment, we have to create these servers. I'm going to go to new runtime, and I can select from several types of web servers. I can choose JBoss. I could add more here. We can download several other additional server adapters that would allow me to deploy to many other servers. But right now, you can deploy from JBoss and Apache. We downloaded Apache Tomcat 7, so I'm going to go there and say next. I'm going to browse to the location of where Tomcat is installed. I'm going to C, and I believe I put it under C down here somewhere. There it is, Tomcat. So I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to say Finish. So now I have a Tomcat instance that's going to be configured, and my IDE, my project is going to be deployed to that particular Tomcat instance. You go next, and Finish. See, I'm going to generate this web.xml, although I don't need it right now. This is kind of like where you configure the entire application. I'm not going to use it today, or actually not even next week. Well, maybe next week. But I'm going to deploy it because I might need it next week. Right? So I'm going to include that. This is where you configure the application. This is the equivalent to app config or web config in the .NET. or PHP in it, right? In the PHP environment. So I'm going to say finish, and it's going to create my very simple application. I see that that some people can't join. Yeah, Professor, 2 more people wants to join, but they aren't able. Is anybody in the same room? Maybe they can share the same place, the same hangout. I am recording, so this is being recorded, and you know they can, I guess they can watch it at a later time. It is unfortunate. Perhaps we have to make a policy that more people have to go into class. I'm pretty sure there's a policy that international students need to go into class. So if you're an international student, you better be at Seattle. I'm not going to tell on you, but I believe there's a policy that international students need to be there, and certainly you could be sharing a Google Hangout at campus. So please, if you can go to campus, and especially if you're an international student, if you could please go there and all share a single connection, that'd be great, please. And this is being recorded, and all these sessions are going to be made available for later use. Anyway, I can't do anything. I believe there's a maximum of 10 people that can join a Google Hangout. So yeah, I apologize. You'll need to look at this at a later date. Anyway, let me come back to this. Online IDE. Okay. Right. So this is now this physically has been created in my local directory. If I go, I can navigate to my local directory where I'm putting it. If I go to Bruce invited me to join a Hangout. Hold on a second. Maybe Bruce wants to join in. We can't join over in Seattle because the Hangout is full. Okay, so he says, okay, we're in. Let me see, are you all set? Are you all set? Okay, let me see what he answers. We're on an L laptop, but no microphone. Okay. Sorry. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, they can hear me. Good. All right, it's being recorded. If you want to see this at some later point, you can look at it. Let me keep going here. Again, we're going to keep this as simple as possible. Okay, we might be doing some shortcuts just to fit it in a 3-hour presentation. Also, we might simplify it at first and maybe come back later and make it a little more sophisticated as we progress throughout the various classes. Okay. All right. So as I was saying earlier, I can see this where it's located physically on my machine. I can go to Documents. It's under GitHub, I believe. Northeastern. There it is. Under GitHub, under 5200. I have it under Lectures, Section 3. There it is. Online IDE. And web content. This web content directory is this same web content over here. And we have meta-inf. We have the web-inf here. The web-inf is where we store various resources that we want to be available to the application in general, but we don't want it to be public to the users, to the various users. Anything under web content is public, right? Except anything you drop into the web-inf, then that's not public. You put there, for instance, any compiled classes you would put here, any libraries you would put here, any configuration files you would put under there, right? So for instance, one of the things that we're going to be putting in there is one of those libraries that we downloaded and we copied here under the JDBC, right? So we're going to drop this jar file, for instance. We're going to move it over into the lib directory. And the lib directory, any library that you drop into the lib directory is automatically made available to the rest of the application, to the rest of the web application. Also, to make it available to the framework in general, to the entire application, we also need to add it to a build path so that it's available to the path in general, to all the classes and all the other resources, so that they too can see the jar file. So we can go to libraries and add external jar files and load that jar file in there. This is very similar in the .NET world, where you might want to add your various DLLs and make it available to the rest of the application. So we're going to say, okay, so now that jar file is available not only to the web application, but is available to all other resources, such as classes, is available everywhere. Okay. All right. So what we want to be able to do, let's see if we could create a very simple hello world, simple pages in here. Right. So let's create here a new HTML page. Let's do HTML. Call it hello.html. And from here, now this text is very small. Let me change the text so that you can see it better from remotely. I'm going to go to Preferences, General, Editors, Text Editors, and then Colors and Fonts. I don't know why they put it so buried in here. So let me say that I wanted to make it maybe Edit. I wanted to make it maybe 16 so that you can see it big in your screens over there. I'm going to say Apply. Let's see if that worked. Yeah, it looks like it worked. Is that better? Hope that's better. Okay, so that's better. If you need it bigger, let me know. Right? If you need a bigger text. So let's real quick say hello world real quick from here. H1 hello world. And let me run that. It's going to say, where do you want to run it? Oh, that server we created earlier. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say finish, and it's going to start it at in a browser that's inside of the IDE. Although it's a very lame browser, so I suggest that you copy it and paste it into a real browser. Maybe paste it here, and you can. I mean, you see the same thing. The server is running, and it's serving that HTML page. All right, so that's simple. Most of you, so anyway, those of you who are going to be using Node and MongoDB and Angular, perhaps this is you're going to do all your coding inside of hello HTML documents, right? Where your logic, your UI, your front-end logic is going to live in JavaScript, and your page is going to be dynamically rendered at the client level, not at the server level. So most of everything that you're going to be doing is inside of hello.html with your JavaScript and your CSS, whatnot. Those of you that are going to be that prefer to be using server-side technology, typically are going to be using some form of server-side rendering, and you're going to be using perhaps JSPs instead. Okay, that's fine. Either way, it's fine. The difference here is that here in your hello.jsp, all the rendering is being done at the server. The server runs this JSP. It computes the HTML, and then it sends that HTML, calculated HTML, back to the client, and then the browser only sees HTML. In the HTML version, you get HTML, only HTML. You download JavaScript, and JavaScripts are responsible for dynamically rendering the client. I mean, there's two different ways of doing the same thing. This one, where you have JavaScript render the HTML, I guess it's a little more modern. It's pretty much where the industry is going today. If it makes the application more responsive, more adaptive to the user. The user doesn't see refreshes of the page, as opposed to using JSPs or ASPs in .NET. those are kind of a little older application technology, where usually the entire page gets re-rendered every time that it gets posted, and data goes back to the server, and the server has to recalculate the new page. Anyway, we'll look at both. Well, let's start with this. Hello, JSPs. This technology, hello, the JSPs or ASPs. It says, are we required to use Java, JavaScript for the project? Can we use .NET? I mean, I'm fine if you use .NET. ASPs, and as long as you use some kind of ORM or some kind of data access layer that allows you to access the database in an object-oriented way. So, for instance, if you use Entity Framework in .NET, that would be fine. We're going to be using an equivalent technology in Java. We're going to be using JPA, which is the equivalent of Entity Framework in .NET. But that's fine. If you want to use .NET, I'm okay with that. As long as, again, I don't want to see some of the things that we're going to do today. So some of the things that we're going to do today is a bad practice, but we're going to quickly fix that and make it a little better, and I'll tell you why, right? So I'll tell you what I don't want to see either in Java or in .NET, and what I want you to create is a high level, an API that allows you to access the database from a high level interface, right? That hides the details of accessing the database, right? It hides the details of accessing the database from the rest. The application doesn't need to know the details of accessing. So we'll talk about that. So again, the same goes for Java or .NET. I want you to use a high level data access layer. Even better, an ORM, an object relational mapping technologies such as Entity Framework or JPA in Java, and we'll introduce all these technologies as we go. Okay. If you is it one project for the entire semester? Yes, one project for the entire semester. So if you have 2 in a group or 3 in a group, or if you're individual, it'll be the same project throughout the semester, right? And what I'm going to do today, you can use it as a boilerplate to get started. It is of a today's example that we're going to work between today and maybe next week will be enough to get you started. It'll be enough of a high level that it'll be acceptable. But ideally, you'll be using even higher level frameworks that we're going to introduce later, JPA, okay, or Entity Framework. Anyway, if you are using ASPs, I'm going to focus on Java. I'm sorry. I will be able to support you in a limited sense, right? I do dabble in .NET. I've done ASP and Entity Framework development, but it's not my day-to-day. My day-to-day, I work at work is I use mostly Java. I mostly use Node, Angular, JavaScript. For that. If you're using Angular and MongoDB, there too I would expect that you're using a high-level relational mapping tool, such as perhaps Mongoose. If you're using MongoDB, that's a good ORM that allows you to interact with MongoDB at a very high level, in an object-oriented way. There too, I don't want to see very low-level access to the database, right? Anyway, so let's look at let's go back to Java as a Java application. All right. All right. So from JSPs, for those that have done ASP.NET, this is very similar. All these ideas are copied straight from ASP.NET, which is a good thing. So let's do H1 here. Let's do a hello world from JSP. Right? Let's run this. I want to run it as a server. Let's say OK. And yes, the same server. I'm going to finish. And there it is. Hello world from JSP. And you could do things in JSP very much like you would do in ASP, right? You could do things such as have Java code, right? here, or if this would be .NET, you could have VB, or you could have C# code embedded in the HTML. You could do things such as have for loops in here, and you can dynamically run this on the server. And in here you could for instance, and you can mix and match. Go into the code, right, and then go back to HTML. So for instance, now it can go back to HTML, right, and for instance, write out the value of I, for instance, right, then go back to so here I could for instance do an li, right, and put this inside of an li. I could say JSP rock, or I'm not going to take size. I'm going to say server side rendering rocks. How's that? Whether you're using JSPs or PHP or ASP or JSP, whatever, right? And let's put here maybe a UL out here, maybe, and then maybe a UL, close it down here. Okay, so so this is, I'm in HTML. This is HTML. I can embed snippets of code of expressions, Java expressions that evaluate a Java expression. Over here, I'm inlining the value of I. I'm going to go back to Java, right? I'm going to go back to Java. There it is. I'm now inside of Java. So I can mix and match these things, right? This is where Java ends, and this is where Java starts again. So this is all Java. This is all Java. So I have an outer for loop, and then I have an inner HTML portion that has an inline that inserts the value of I. Okay, let's run that. Let me go back to my hello JSP. I can refresh. There it is. It says server-side rendering rocks 0 through 9. I can hit it also from a real browser. There it is, right? I go to hello.jsp. I can also not only have all this mix and match of Java code and HTML, I can also use classes that I might declare outside. Right? So I might have a new class out here and create a new class instead of a package. I'll call the package edu.neu.cs5200 section 3, and I'll call it, let's see, this is an online IDE, right? So this online IDE, and then in here I'm going to create applications. Right? Applications. I create a main that allows me to online IDE, yeah, applications. And in here I'm going to call it application DAO. So I'm going to create here a file, a class that allows me to manipulate something in the database. Actually, no. Let me just do a hello world first. Let me do a hello world. A hello class. Very very dumb hello class. Right. So let's do that. There it is. I can execute the class from within here. I can say system.out.println hello world. Hello world. I can run it, as a standalone class, just as a Java application. Yes, save that. There it is. It just runs and it prints to the console, right? As if I were to run it from the console. Or I can also, run it from my JSP, right? I could say, public string, get message, say hello, and then I can pass in an argument, some name, and maybe return, hello, and then concatenate it with a name. Okay. So now this notice that the the server, where's the server? The server has been compiling this on the fly. Every time I make a change, it recompiles and redeploys everything. So Tomcat is configured to by default, redeploy everything, compile and redeploy everything, and have everything ready to go. So we could go to hello.jsp and refer to that class that lives in this package here, right? In this package, I can go to my JSP and refer to it and import it. I can say import that class, that whole package, right? By pasting here .star. So everything that is in that package, I want to import it. So I want to access it from within my JSP here. Now that I have it, that I've imported it from my JSP, I can instantiate it hello h or hello new hello, right? And I can say hello dot. So you notice that I have what was it? Say hello. There it is. And I can say Joe, right? And that's going to respond to me with a string message. And now that string, I can use it, wherever I want. I could use it maybe as part of my message here, or I can put it at the front here if I want. Message, right? And I can go to my JSP. Notice that I can just refresh this. There it is. Hello, Joe. Right. So my server side class, right? I can compute values. My hello class could very well go and make a network connection and connect to something. Maybe I can read a file. I can connect to a database. I can do whatever I want in this method, right? And that's exactly what we're going to be doing, right? We have server access. Now this JSP is running on the server, and this hello is also running on the server. If this were an HTML, the HTML, when it gets to the client, when it gets to the browser, the browser doesn't have access to the database, right? It needs to be able to have some proxy, client server side resource, serve as a proxy to access the server side resources, right? And for that, you have JavaScript, you have web services, and that's an entirely different architecture, which we'll be talking about a little later in the course. Okay. For now, let's keep it simple, all server side. Any questions so far? This is pretty simple, right? Is everybody able to follow along? Okay. Yeah, this is pretty simple. I mean, this is not hard at all, I hope. All right then. So I think we're dangerous enough that we could start actually building something, right? We know how to create a class. We know how to talk to it from a JSP. We know how to render and create some dynamic content. Basically, what's left to do is learn how to connect to a database, right? And put stuff in the database, retrieve things from the database, right? And get it to be displayed here in this application, right? And again, this is a web development course. I'm not going to spend time debating on whether this is a good design. Purists would say that JSPs should not have too much code inside of the JSPs. That they should only be they should only care about rendering the data on how it's going to be laid out. UI logic, not any data not accessing data actually. Right? So but I'm not going to debate about UI. This is not a web development course. We want to get as close as possible to database to talk about database issues. All right. All right. So I'm creating an online IDE. So with online IDEs, you create what? You create applications. Yes. So let's create a database that would allow us to do that. Right. All right. So to do that, we have a database running. I believe yes, the database is running. So MySQL is running. Let's run a client that will allow me to connect to MySQL. There are several clients. There's, MySQL Workbench is one of the prettier ones. I'm going to use an off-the-shelf, free, open source. Well, not open source, but a free client that is very common in today. I'm going to use Toad, or Toad for MySQL. Oh, you heard that? I don't want to install the latest version, not right now anyway. And I have a MySQL instance is running in localhost and is running at this particular port. And I have it set up so I can log in just with root and no password. I mean, obviously, if this were a production environment, I would definitely put a password. I would put, change their user to something different. Anyway, I'm going to connect. And I'm connected. I have quite a few databases declared here, that I use for various courses. I'm going to create a brand new one. I can say, let's see. I can say new. I can say new. Where do I create one? Databases. Okay, in the databases, I can create a brand new one. Create a database. I'm going to call it Online IDE. Online IDE. And say OK. I'm going to select that Online IDE. Where do I create it? There it is, the last one. Okay, if I go to tables, I'll notice that there are no tables in the Online IDE. Let me create a table. We want to create applications in our IDE, so I'm going to create a new table. Here, I'm going to call it applications. And I'm not going to get into the debate on whether this should be plural or singular. Some people prefer these to be plural. Some people prefer these to be singular. So my table is going to be called applications because it's going to have a collection of applications. The column, I'm going to create an ID. That's going to be my primary key. I'm going to have also applications are going to have a name, which is going to be varchar. And I'm going to set the size of the name of my applications to 100. And oops, I'm going to alter it. I wanted to add a couple more things here. Sorry. The columns, I want to add a couple more things. I want to add price. And I'm going to use a double for that. What else? Let's see. Now in the application, I'm going to go to primary key. I'm going to say that my primary key is going to be my ID. I'm also going to configure it to say that I don't really want to, every time you insert. Wait, did that work? Primary key. Yeah, there we go. Columns, that should be not null. Also, I'm going to configure it so that it automatically increments the ID. I don't want to have to think of what ID to use, right? I'm going to configure it so that it automatically creates one. So that every time a new application is inserted, this ID will auto increment from 1, 2, 3, 4. This is equivalent in SQL Server to identity when you create a table. So I'm going to say true and say OK. All right, I think that's it. I'm going to say OK. There it is. So here's applications. Like if I double click, it'll go and it will allow me to see the schema of the application. I can see the data. We'll notice that there is no data. So let's see how we can connect to this database and add applications programmatically from our application. All right, so let me go back to my IDE. Okay, let me create here in my package. I want to create here a new class. I'm going to call it applications DAO. Right. So applications DAO. So what this is what I want to do is I want to have a single place that will allow me to have all the API that allows me to create, delete, update, select, right, applications into my database. So this will be my single point of maintenance, right, that will allow me to connect to a database and do everything that I need to do with that table, as opposed to putting as opposed to just having access to a database anywhere that I want. Instead, I'm going to put it all in a single place. This is a good design pattern. to follow, right? To have a single place. And I'm called DAO. DAO stands for Data Access Object, right? So this is my place where I manage everything that I need to do with that database for the applications table. I'm going to call main, and there it is. Here's my application DAO. Now let me run this, see if this works. System .out.println. Hello from applications DAO. Let me run this, make sure that we're up and running as a Java application, and say OK. There it is. OK. All right. So what I want to be able to do is create a connection, right, to the database. Right. So I want to be able to, use this data access object to talk to the database. Right. So I want to be able to create it, a new application DAO, and maybe create a connections from the database and applications. Okay, applications. Sorry. I want to be able to create a connection, insert, delete, do everything in here. So we're gonna create a function in here that is able to connect. Okay. So let's make it public. Creates a connection and gets a connection from the database. How do we do that? How do we get a connection? Okay. Notice if I hover over this, it says, well, you added a jar file that declares a connection class, and it's inside of a package com.mysql.jdbc. There it is, right? And it's called connection. This is telling me, is that the one you mean? Because there's another one under Corba, and there's yet another one under Jindy, and there's yet another one under Java SQL. So I am parsing all these jar files, equivalent to DLLs, all these jar files, and I'm finding all these classes that have the same name. So it's ambiguous. Which one do you mean? Well, the one we mean is this Java SQL one, this generic connection, right? Internally, really is going to use the MySQL JDBC, right? So basically, this is just an interface that implements this class, right? And what this allows us to do is, if I import this one, what this will allow me to do is make my code independent on the underlying database. So this will somewhat allow me to kind of swap databases and be able to tomorrow use the same exact code, but use Oracle or use Postgres or your SQL Server. It's be exactly the same code connected to various databases. So I'm going to use this one, Java SQL. And that's complaining, saying that you don't have a connection, you're not returning a connection. So add a return statement saying that return null. So that's the default, to return null. But we don't yet know how to get a connection. So let's get a connection from MySQL. Right? Now to do that, I have a cheat sheet over here because I can never remember how what the various steps are. The first step is to get the driver. And there it is. That's the line of code that instantiates the driver, looks for a driver name, right? This is a package name. This is a package, and inside of that package, you have a driver class. Notice that we are instantiating the MySQL driver, right? So this searches the class path for this exact class in that package, and it creates a brand new instance, and it registers it, right? Then we use a driver manager to get a connection from using this connection URL. This is the equivalent of a connection string in .NET. That maps, right, that for that particular provider, MySQL, you want to use this particular class. So driver manager is smart enough to know that for this URL, you want to use that class, that driver, okay, right? And it will give you a connection to that particular server, a server that is running at that particular IP address. In this case, would be 127.0.0.1, or just localhost, listening at that particular port. And in this particular case, the database is, we called it, what do we call it? Online IDE. Is that it? Right? Well, I don't want to say that. So let's copy this. Let's copy this into our code to getting the connection. There it is. The class for name is going to search the class path to find it. Notice that what this allows me to do is that I can programmatically choose which driver I want to use, whether I want to connect to one database or another database, right? Now this throws an exception. It says this throws an exception. So what do you want to do? You want to surround this with a try catch. I'm going to do that. There it is. It's smart enough to know that new instance can throw all sorts of exceptions. You know, instantiation exception, illegal access exception, class not found exception. We could get lazy and just say, you know, just use the generic exception class, and that would take care of all the exceptions. But let's leave all of them, right? Also notice that it generates some generic, you know, prints a stack trace, but we could override that and do whatever we really want. What else do we want to do? Let's see. We need a connection string. We're going to declare that out here. There it is. Right. That's the connection URL that would allow me to connect to MySQL, listening at that port to that database. What else do we need? We need a connection. We need a connection. So let's create a connection object. Right. Connection equal null. Okay. And then instantiate it. Get it from the driver manager, right? So let's put that in here. And notice that it's complaint saving driver manager. So driver manager, again, it doesn't know about it. I need to import it. Notice that it's not listed in my import clauses up here, right? If I hover over this, this tells me, well, I found it in the class path. Is it this one? Is it java.sql? Yes, it is that one. Notice it gives me the options to create the class, right, or import a new one, import the existing one. So let's go that. Notice that it adds it to my driver manager import clauses, right? Also now it's complaining about something else. Let's see. Let's hover over that. It says this throws an exception called SQL exception. What do you want me to do? You want me to add a throws clause here at the function level, or what do you want me to do? You want me to add a catch clause to the existing try catch? Let's do that. Let's add a catch clause. So notice that it added it down here. There it is. Okay. Again, we could get lazy and just use a single exception, right? We could just do that and get rid of all the other ones, right? Although it's considered bad practice to do that, right? You want to be able to handle each individual exception separately and handle them correctly. But let's keep it academically here, okay? Just for brevity's case. So here we have the connection. I'm going to return the connection. Let's try the connection. See from main. Let's try from main. See if we get a connection. Connection from DAO dot get connection. Actually, before I get the connection, you know what I should do? I should also make sure that I close the connection, because if I run this now, I'm going to get the connection. Well, maybe, but then I'm not going to have a way to close the connection, right? So let me create here another function that will allow me to close the connection. So void close connection. It takes a connection and then closes a connection. So I'm going to say connection that close. So this is going to complain, saying that this perhaps throws an exception. I'm going to do put it around, surrounded with a try catch block. There it is, right? So there it is. It closes the connection. So now I have both. I can get the connection, and if I have the connection, I can then say DAO close the connection. Oops, sorry. Close the connection. Okay. And if I don't close it, it's going to stay open. Eventually, it'll time out. But if I forget to close it, oh, did I misspell it? I misspelled it, didn't I? Let me refactor it. Let me go refactor. I will rename it. Close connect on. There it is. So it changed everywhere. I'm going to system.out print this. See if it returns null, or maybe it'll throw an exception. This whole thing will blow up. Okay. Let's see. Let me look at the console, see if I get any errors. So let's run this from here. Let's run it. Okay, so it didn't print null and it didn't blow up. So that means that it was able to successfully connect and get a connection, and it prints some, the memory location of where it's being stored. All right, everybody okay? Anybody have a question? This should be pretty easy. Everybody be able to follow along? Okay. All right, awesome. All right, so this should be very easy. I believe from any background you come, you should find this pretty easy to follow along. Right? Again, each framework has its own quirks, its own idiosyncrasies. Java may be a little bit more involved, only because it's kind of trying to have that mantra of compile once, run anywhere, right? It's trying to create these abstractions that allow you to abstract the machine, so it doesn't matter where. Presumably, it doesn't matter which framework you run. As long as you have a JVM, you should be able to run any application, any Java application. It's trying to abstract the fact that there are many vendors of databases. It's trying to abstract all sorts of things, right? So it's a little more involved. This lookup of these drivers. There's no standard driver like maybe SQL Server. On the Microsoft side, maybe it's a little easier since by default perhaps you have a SQL Server, but then obviously you can install other drivers to connect to other, and then it can get pretty involved as well. But anyway, let's we know how to get a connection, and we know how to close a connection, right? Let's close that. I don't want to do that from DAO. What I want to be able to do here is maybe create an application, right? So I want to be able to create an application. I can say void application create an application. Create application. Okay, return null for now. Return null. So I want to create an application into the database. So what I want to be able to do is have an object-oriented representation of the database, right? So that my program, my application can work at the correct level of abstraction without having to think about what SQL I need to create this app. How do I insert? Instead of having all these inserts everywhere in my code, I only have it here, right? And I have a nice API that allows me to forget the fact that I'm even using any particular database, right? So I need to have an object-oriented representation of the database, right? So just like my database has its own schema, right, that has an ID, a name, and a price, well, I need something equivalent in the object world that would allow me to represent all those records in memory, in RAM, right? So I would like to have a class application that would have those same attributes: ID, name, and price. So notice that here my IDE says that there is no such class application. Do you want to create it? So yes, I want to create the application. It's going to put it under this package, yes, and the name is going to be called application. I'm not going to use main. I could have done the same thing if I go here, right? I could go here and right-click new class, right, and then give it the name application. I could have done that too, right? But I was just wanted to show you how the IDE kind of helps you, with these squiggly lines, guiding you what's missing, what does it need, right? So let's create it using this method. It's the same method, right? So there it is. It creates application. Notice that application DAO is no longer complaining. Let's create some of these fields. Int ID. Well, all these are private. Private int ID. Private string name. Private double price. Right? Now, since these are private, obviously I need to provide a setter and getter for these. Unfortunately, we don't have the nice set get that .NET provides. We don't have that, unfortunately. I don't know if newer versions of Java might have something similar. What we could do is just use the IDE to facilitate the creation of setters and getters. You know, it's very tedious to create setters and getters. They're pretty much all the same. So we're going to create some default setters and getters with all the fields. I can say just OK, and there it is. I have all my setters and getters. I can also create some default constructors. Right. So generate constructors. I'm going to create a generate one that takes all the arguments, an all argument constructor. So there it is, my all argument constructor. I'm going to create also another constructor that one that doesn't take the ID, because sometimes I want to be able to create an application object without an ID, because perhaps I'm creating the application, I don't have an ID, I only have the name and the price, and it's going to be inserted. Once it gets inserted, then I will have an ID. Okay, so I'm going to say OK. I'm going to say OK. There it is. Right, that once it doesn't take an ID argument, and perhaps I want also a default constructor that with no arguments whatsoever. Right, there it is. Okay, everybody okay? Right, this is object orientation 101, right? Object oriented 101. Okay, all right. We have our class. I don't think we have to do anything here. Notice that this is sometimes referred to as a value object, right? It's an object that the only thing that it's doing is to hold data. That's all it does, right? It has no business logic. It has almost no validation. But we could put some validation here, perhaps. Maybe validate the fact that price cannot be negative, things like that, perhaps. But otherwise, it's only used for holding values. That's all, right? Sometimes this is also referred to in Java as a POJO, a plain old Java object. All right, let's go back to my application DAO. In the create, I'm going to return void here. Create is going to create the application, okay, but it's not going to do anything with it. It's not going to return it. So how do we want to insert this into a database? Okay, well, to do that, we need to get a hold of a connection, and we already have functions to do that, right? We have the connections here, so we can get a connection from the get connection. And before I forget, I'm going to close it. Close connection. And before I forget, okay. So what do we do with that connection? Well, what we want to do is, we want to have kind of like we want to execute the following SQL, right? We want to do something like, insert into the table applications. I know we haven't talked about inserts yet or selects. We're a little behind, but this is a good introduction on why would I use it. Here's an insert that will allow me to insert into my database. Actually, we could run a couple of these here, right? We could run a couple of SQL statements here. You say let's insert a couple of things here. We can insert into applications, and then say that I want the name, and I want the price, and then the values. Tic-tac-toe, and the price is $0.99. Right, and we can execute this. See if this works. If we go back to the applications table and we refresh this, there it is. There's tic-tac-toe. Can you see this? I can't increment. I don't know if I can increment the size of the text. It looks pretty small. Yeah, I don't know how to do it. The font. Anyway, I'll try to find out how I can increment the font. Anyway, we can insert a couple more. Maybe we can create a to-do list. To-do list. It's 199, and we can execute it, right? And we can go to the application table, and we can refresh this F5. There it is, to-do list tic-tac-toe. Anyway, we want to be able to do the same thing, but programmatically from here, from Java, right? So there it is. So application. So let's copy that string here. Let's copy this. Let's paste it here, right? And we can work with this here. So there it is. So name, price. Notice that I failed to put the ID here. I didn't put the ID here on purpose, right? Because the ID, remember that I said the ID is going to be handled by the database, right? I said that it would be auto increment, and it automatically went from 1, 2, 3. It's going to go and do that, right, for me. So I don't have to provide the ID, right? So same thing here. What I'm going to do here, I want to be able to parameterize this. So instead of having here a little, what I want to be able to do is put a placeholder here. Put a placeholder, right? Well, actually, what other way I could have done it? Well, I could have done the following instead, right? I could have done, for instance, the following. I could have said, well, that's going to be a string, so I need to have the 2 quotes. I'm gonna use application dot get name, right? I could have done this instead, right? Now, but if I do that, okay, I'm going to open it myself to what it's called a flaw or an attack called SQL injection, right? What SQL injection is that somebody could insert, right, a name, the application name could have a string, right, that will terminate the current execution of this insert, right, and say, abort that, and then execute, their own SQL, right? I have an XKCD. I don't know. Does anybody follow XKCD? Here's an XKCD that illustrates the problem. Right? It says as a joke, right? It says, "Hi, this is your son's school." So this is calling their mom. Says, "We're having some computer trouble," and then the mother answers, "Oh dear, did my child break something?" And then the principal returns saying, "Well, in a way," and then the principal asks, "Did you really name your son Robert, quote, close parentheses, semicolon, drop table students, semicolon, dash, dash," right? So imagine somebody typing that in, and that being the insert that would go inserted would be replaced here, right? Well, that would probably wreak havoc in my string, right? It would terminate my insert. It would then execute drop table something, right? Semicolon dash 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 dash, meaning everything else is a comment. Everything else would be, meaning ignore everything else, right? And then execute. If I somebody could use this to perhaps run select statements that would read user information, including username, passwords, things like that, right? That would maybe perhaps displayed in their browsers, right? So they could then use those identities to perhaps log in and wreak havoc, right? Or perhaps insert themselves as users, as super admin users, right? And do all sorts of things. Anyway, so the mom responds, "Oh yeah, we call him Bobby Tables. We call him, right?" And the principal answers, "Well, we lost this year's student records. I hope you're happy." And then the mother answers, says, "Well, and I hope you learn to sanitize your database inputs, right? To make sure that that the input that comes in, you make sure that this data that comes in here doesn't have any malicious any malicious strings, right, or any malicious components." So we don't want to deal with that. There are already very well defined techniques that deal with this issue. We don't want to deal with it. Instead, what we're going to do is have a question mark I'm going to make a placeholder here. Did anybody have a question about what I just said? Okay. It's too bad. It's too bad if we just make our window big enough. I'm sorry, what happened here? It's fine, blah, blah.
You were asking if we could see the font. Remember, that's all old.
Oh, okay. Font, is that the font in the ID in the Toad?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think it was in Toad. You were asking if we could see it. It wasn't. At least on my screen, it wasn't too bad.
Okay. Yeah, I'll investigate how to change the font there. I don't know where they bury it. All right, thank you. Okay, so let's keep going. Let's go back here in the IDE. Where's the IDE? Okay, there it is. All right, so what I want to be able to do here is now that I have the connection and I have the SQL statement, I want to create a statement out of it, right? And now there is a statement as part of the JDBC API, but that statement does not save us from SQL injector. So instead of using statement, we're going to use a better version of statements called a prepared statements, right? That allows us to compile this string into a reusable statement that we could use, and also allows us to populate and make sure that these values are strongly typed, right? If we're expecting a string, the prepared statement will make sure that this is indeed a string and will automatically add the right quotation and automatically make sure that we don't have any malicious code in there, and it'll take care of SQL injection for us, right? Also, we'll make sure that price inside application was declared as a double. It'll verify that indeed we are passing a double. Okay, so prepared statement will do that for us. Notice that it's complaining, so we're going to import it. We'll say import, not the MySQL version. We're going to import the Java SQL version, the generic interface, as opposed to the class that implements the interface. So there it is. We imported it, and so we're going to say that this is a statement, and we're going to say we're going to get it from the connection dot prepared statement, and we're going to pass the SQL. Right? So this is going to compile this. Now it's complaining and saying that this throws an exception. We're going to surround it with a try catch. There it is. We surrounded a try catch. Also, we're going to put this close connection, and we're going to put it inside of a finally. We're going to put it inside of a finally, and say that no matter what, whether whether the exceptions get thrown, whether if this blows up, if this function blows up, right? I want to guarantee that at least this gets executed, right? So finally allows me to put something here that is guaranteed to execute, even though there might be exceptions that would make this whole thing blow up. Okay. This is guaranteed, so I will guarantee to close that connection, right? All right, now I have the statement. What I want to be able to do is I want to be able to execute that statement. Well, I need to first populate these parameters. So let's do that. Let's say statement dot set. The first one is a string, so I'm going to set a string of the first parameter. I want to populate it with my application instance. Application dot get name, right? And then I want to populate the second parameter. It's a double. There it is. The second parameter, I want to populate it with application dot get price. There it is. Okay. Once I've populated, I want to execute the statement. I want to say execute. There it is. So that executes, and hopefully that will insert that into a database, and then finally close the connection. Right? Let's try it out from our DAO, from our main. I'm going to say DAO. Well, let's create an instance of an application. Application app1, right? New application, and we can pass in some attributes, some parameters. I'm going to say maybe we can do a contact list. Contact list. Do we have a contact list? I forget. 399. Let me see. Let me go back to my table. We have a tic-tac-toe and a to-do list application. Here's my contact list. I'm going to create that. Have an instance of the application, and then use DAO.create application. I'm going to pass app1. Right? Notice that this allows me to forget everything about SQL or whatever underlying database I might be using, and hide all those details behind an API, right? Create will get the connection, we'll do the insert, we'll close the connection, right? So let's run this. Okay, I think it did its thing. It didn't blow up. Let me go back to my thing and let's refresh. So there it is. Contact list made it in there. Awesome. Okay. But what I want to be able to do is that not do it from here, from main, but what I really want to be able to do is to do this from where? From my web application, right? From some web application. So let's try to replicate this from a web application. Let's create a JSP here, right? That handles applications. So let's do a new JSP here, and let's call it applications.jsp. Okay. What we're going to do here is that we're going to paste here the code. There it is. I copied and pasted it. Notice that it's complaining. It says, I don't know the application's name. Where's that? I don't know what that is. An application, I don't know that either. I need to import it. I need to import the package where it's being declared. Import. Where is it? Where does it live? It lives under this package. I can go here and copy the package. There it is. I'm going to copy that. Go back to my applications. Paste it in here and say I want to load everything inside of that application. That makes sense? Okay. All right. So I loaded. Notice that it's no longer complaining. It found the DAO. Let's create another one. Let's create one that's chess. Let's create chess. Right, and that costs $4.99. Right, and let's run this JSP. Let's run this JSP. Let's run it. Let's run it at the server. Let's run it. Yes, and that server. Let's say finish. Restart the server. I'll restart the server. Well, it didn't render anything because I don't believe we rendered any HTML. Nothing blew up. Let's see my console. Let's see if I have any exceptions. It looks like I don't have any exceptions. Let's go to my server, my database, and let's refresh. Oh, there you go. Chess made it in there. Right, chess made it in there. Okay. Okay. But what we want to be able to do, right, is not only create application, but we want to be able to retrieve applications from our web application, right? So we want to be able to do something like, I don't know, like DAO dot select all applications, right? And ideally this would return something like a list of applications, right? Right? This returns a list of applications. This would be the ideal, right? I notice that it's complaining about lists. So lists, I need to import that as well. That list lives where? Let's see. It lives under java.util.star. That's where list lives. Select all definitely doesn't exist. So let me go back to applications DAO. Okay. And create a select all. So let's create a select all. Right. Here's public. This is going to return a list of applications. I select all. And what's it going to do? Notice that it's complaining about list. Let me import that. Import Java util. So there it is. It imports it. There we go. Select all. And notice that the server is recompiling, right? It notices that I changed the file, I saved it, and it recompiles and redeploys. So that's nice, right? I don't have to stop the server and redeploy anything, right? It hot deploys everything. So that's nice. That's very convenient. So let's see. So what I want to be able to do is create an empty application list, right? Applications, new array list of applications. It's empty now, right? And then I'm going to return applications. Array list, I need to load that in, import that as well. It's also under Java util. So worst case scenario, right, I'm going to return an empty list of applications. Okay? Right? That's but I want to be able to select, right? I want to do an SQL. I want to do a select, retrieve everything from applications. Again, I know we haven't talked about these SQL statements just yet, but this will give us something to talk about next week, perhaps. Now I have a SQL statement. At the SQL, I want to execute this, right? So to do that, I need a connection. Right, let me get a connection from the get connection. And before I forget, let me close that connection. Connection, very good. With that connection, I want to create a prepared statement. From the connection. Prepared the statement with the SQL, very good. This throws an exception, so I'm going to surround it. Okay, there we go. And I'm gonna put this in finally, right? I'm gonna finally put the close connection. I misspelled it. Sorry. Finally. Now that I have the statement, and I've prepared the statement, I can execute. The query. So that's what I want to do. I want to do statement. I want statement. I want to execute. But it's a query. I want to execute a query, right? There it is. And what that query, what it does, if I hover over it, notice that it returns a result set. Right? It returns a result set. Now that is a collection of all the records that meet my criteria, I don't have a criteria. I don't have a where clause. It says I want all the records in the applications table, right? So it returns the entire set of records. How many? 4. Okay. So it puts them in a result set. Results. Okay, so results represents all my records. I'm going to import that as well. There it is. I imported it. There we go. So now what I need to do is basically iterate over all my records in the result set and basically instantiate an application instance populated with all the fields in those records and add it to my list of applications. That's basically what I need to do, right? So to do that, I'm going to use a while loop to iterate over the results. Right? So the next, what it does is that next advances to the next record, right? And as long as there are more records in the result set, this returns true. When there are no more records, this returns false, and then it falls out of the while loop. Okay. Also notice that it executes before I do anything with any record. So at first, the result set basically is not pointing to, it's not referencing any record, not the first, second, or any record, right? It's in a place called before first, right? Not until you do that first next does it actually reference any the first record. Okay, so that next does 2 things basically, right? First, it advances to the first record and then advances additional records until there are no more records. Okay. So anyway, so we are at the first record. We're going to extract all the different pieces. We're going to extract the name from the result sets. Right. We're going to extract a string, get string, from a column called name, right, and copy it into a local variable name. Then, well, also the ID. Let's get the ID first. Let's get the ID. Int ID. Again, from the result set, get integer, and from a column called ID. And also, let's retrieve the price from the results. Remember, the result is looking at the current record, right? So we are retrieving all this from a current record. from these fields in that record. Right? So we have price. There we go. Now we have all the local variables read in from the record that we're pointing, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a new application instance, right? New application using all the three fields, right? All the three parameters: ID, name, and price, right? And now that we have the application instance, we're going to add it to the applications list. Add application. Oops. Application. There we go. Right? And that list, eventually we're going to return it to whoever's calling this. Okay? Now notice, here's a question, right? What if my records, you have thousands of records, right? Thousands of applications. Well, obviously, this results set is not going to be able to load all thousands of records in here, right? Obviously, we don't have enough RAM, to hold that kind of data. The database obviously is storing all this in the file system, so it has plenty of space to store all these records, thousands of records. But we don't. We're loading it at runtime into the server memory space, right? And we don't have enough RAM to hold thousands of records. So result set is actually a pretty smart object, right? A class that is smart enough to, ask for a subset of the records, right? And then iterate over them, give you an API that basically looks like as if you are iterating over all the records, right? I mean, as far as we're concerned, we have all the records here, right? But behind the scenes, obviously, it cannot load all the records. So it's smart enough to, use the connection string that it's using and keep asking for more records as you are iterating over the records. So it keeps track of where it was. It asks for a subset of the records, and as you consume the records in memory, it goes and fetches more records and loads them into memory. So it's pretty smart. Anyway, so let's try doing accessing this. Notice that this select all, it doesn't see it yet, does it? Let's see if I try it again. If I type it again, DAO, there it is, select all. Now it sees it. There we go. Now I have the list of applications here in a JSP. So I could render this, right? I could render this in a list. Right? I could render this as a list. Maybe I could have perhaps, I could go for a second into into my HTML. Now I'm in HTML. I could say here's a UL, right? And in that UL, perhaps what I want to be able to do is go back to Java, right, and declare maybe a for loop, right, that iterates over. It does for application app in applications. This is the equivalent in .NET to doing a for each, right? Right. And as I iterate over this, I want to create a line item, right? So let me go back to HTML. Let me go back. Let me go here. Now I'm back in HTML. I want to do an LI, right? And that LI, perhaps I want to do maybe a span. I want to put in here the name of the application, app.getName, or the name, yeah, the name. Here we go. Maybe I want to render here not only the name. I want to put here the what else? Let's see, what else we have here. Get price. There we go. Just those two. Just those two. Then we're going to close the LI. There it is. We close the LI. So we're done with our HTML. Let me go back to Java. So let me. I'm back in Java. I'm back in Java, and then I can close the curly bracket for that for loop. Okay? Everybody okay? Right. So again, all this is being rendered at the server level. So let's see what we have here. If we go back to our application.java, let me put also here an H1, right? Maybe an H1 saying H1 applications. How's that? Let me go back here and refresh my JSP. See if it, oh, there it is, applications, and it renders my applications, my the name and the $sign, right? Perhaps I could prefer to render it in a different way. Maybe I would prefer these to be tables, a table instead. That's one nice thing about the Visual Studio that I love is that, for instance, if you change one of the tags, it changes the closing tag as well, which is pretty cool. I wish Eclipse had that. Maybe there's a plugin for Eclipse that does that. Okay, so here we have these are rows, table rows, right? Table rows. Maybe these could be table data. Table data. And these are table data. TD and TD. So I can go back to my browser and I can refresh. And now this is a table. It's a table, right? That's a pretty ugly table, isn't it? That's a pretty ugly. Let's paint this a little bit. Let's add some flair, really quick. Okay, we can say here, let's add a CSS folder. Let's add a CSS folder. I'm sorry, this is my web development speaking. Let's add real quick a little CSS in here. Let's see, I believe I have one here that I can use. Let me go to downloads. I think I have Bootstrap somewhere here. Bootstrap is a nice set of styles that are very popular amongst web developers that allow you to very quick put something that looks very professional. So I'm going to drag that into my CSS folder. I'm going to copy them in there. Okay, and then in my application.jsp, what I'm going to do is very simply, I'm going to create a link to those CSS. I'm going to say link, and I'm going to say href is equal to CSS/bootstrap bootstrap.css. Okay, and the rel is equal to style sheet. Let's close that. Right. And let me reload that, see if that works. Well, I don't know if it deployed. I hope it deployed. Let me refresh. Okay, that looks a little better. It's a little better. Let me add just a little more flair. I'm going to say table. I'm going to paint this with a class of table. Okay, this is a Bootstrap class that allows me to make really a little more professional looking pages. Okay. All right, enough of painting this. I just wanted to make it look a little prettier. Anyway, so what we want to be able to do here is, let's see, we have a way to create, don't we? Right? We have a way to create these things, right? So we have a way. So we would like to be able to invoke this create from our page. Okay. So let's do that. Let's add like some form, perhaps something that we could submit that would create these pages, right? These applications, right? So let's add here perhaps maybe a little form in here. Maybe over here we can create a little form here that points to ourselves. Now, typically this would go to a controller that would handle this, but I don't want to get into controls just yet. So let's have ourselves handle the fact that we are submitting this form. Okay. So let's have a form here that opens and closes. Okay. And let's create a row. Let's create a row in the table. The first row is going to have a little form for us, right? We're going to have TD here, a couple of input fields that we can type in the name and the price for a new application. So let's create here an input field. Okay, we're going to call this the name of the application. Okay, and we're going to create another input field and name it price. Okay. Another reason why I'm giving you this this boilerplate is because, again, I don't want to have you waste time coding all this. Again, it's not a web it's not a web course. I might as well just give you this, for you to get started. And also, I'm explaining you also how it works and how it's being used to access the database. I want you to focus more on the database portion, right? So I'll give you this so you can get started. So let's see how that renders. I don't like this browser. I'm going to use a real browser to render this. Where's the browser? My browser here. There it is. So those input fields, there they are, right? They're kind of ugly. Sorry, they look awful. I'm going to add here a class called form control. Again, that's a bootstrap class that makes it look a little more. There it is. They look a little more professional. Okay. Also, it as you hover, it kind of like highlights it. Anyway, so let's see. Also, we need something here to submit the form. So let's add an additional TD here that with a button. The button that allows us to submit the form. And we'll call this button. We'll call that add. How's that? Add. Did it deploy? It didn't deploy. Are you deploying? Because I didn't see the button. Oh, there it is. That's the button. There it is. It shows over there. Again, that button is pretty ugly. We can paint it a little bit with some flair. We can say this is a button. There it is. It's a little better, a little prettier. What about these over here? We might want to be able to remove these applications, right? Well, let's focus on this add. This add is going to submit. It's going to submit. Where's that going to go? It's going to be submitted to ourselves, meaning our page is going to reload. We're going to have to be able to handle that submit, right? It's something like in .NET the page onload, right? When and you want to be able to distinguish on whether this is a page reload, or is it the first time you come in, or is it consecutive times that you're loading a page. Well, here in .NET you would put this logic perhaps in a code behind C# code. Over here we're going to keep it all in the same page, right? We're going to handle it in the page, right? Anyway, so what we're going to do here, we're going to name this button. We're going to give it a name, right? We're going to say that we want to submit the fact that the action that they're taking is that they are adding, right? They are creating, perhaps. They are creating a new application, right? The action that they're taking is that they're creating an application, right? So what we're going to do here is that when this page reloads, what we're going to do, we're going to parse out all those things that are being passed to us, all these names, right? All these names. Let's see what happens, right? Let's see what happens when we submit. Let's reload this, right? Let's see when we type here checkers, right? And we pass here 5.599. We say add. Notice that the page reloaded. It flickered. We didn't notice it, but it did flicker. Notice that on the URL we have those things that got passed through the form. You see that? Name checkers, ampersand price 5.99, ampersand action equal create. You see that? Well, we could use that. If we could parse that out from the URL, we could use that as arguments, right, to create into the DAO, right? We can call the create method. So let's do that. Let's parse out from the query. Right? We can parse it out as follows. We can parse out the name from the request. Request is it's a magical object, right? It's a keyword in the JSP that represents the query, the entire query. Right? It represents the URL, the IP address, the port. This entire URL string. right? The entire query string, the name value parameters. Okay, Andrew, you have a question? Jose, so are we allowed to steal the Java HTML here for our project? Of course, yes, please. Use everything that I give you as a starting point, right? Again, I want you to use this as you could use this as a starting point, and then reuse this as much as possible, and then focus on the database. Designing the database, focusing on the tables, using those constraints, those one-to-many, those mapping tables, those association classes. Yes, and then obviously you'll have your own code that accesses your tables, right? That accesses, that manage, that create, that selects your particular tables, right? And handles all the relationships amongst all these tables, right? But again, I want to give you something that works, that you can get going as fast as possible. All right. Okay, so you can focus on the database piece, right? But again, I want you to understand how this works, so that you can make your own modifications. Again, this is server-side development, right? In a couple of weeks, I'll show you how to do this on the client side. I hope you can choose on either one or as early as possible, so you can get started. What time is it? It's 10:48. All right, let me do this real quick, and then we can have a quick break, a bio break for the class. Let's see. Request dot get parameter. So get parameter allows me to retrieve those queries that are in the query string. I can say retrieve the name and store it locally here in the local variable string. String ID. These are all strings. That's another question. Is there another question from the? Any other questions, Jose? We allowed to. Gotcha. Thanks. Okay. What's the API programmable web used for? Yeah. So some of you, I would say most of you, have expressed interest in using web APIs, right? Where you can access third-party data that lives on the cloud, right? You can download data from those third-party data providers, and what you would do is you would combine data from data that is accessible online plus data that you would store in your local database, and what you would do is that you would use your database to augment or complement data that that you can extract from remote servers. If you go to programmable web, if you go there, you'll see that there's tons of websites that provide free web services to retrieve information about music, about movies, about biomedical information, transportation, games. I mean, you name it. There's an API for it. Weather, right? So if you go to weather, wait, if I can spell. There's weather.com, there's Weather Channel, there's Weather Source, tons of these APIs. And yes, as quickly as possible, you should find an API that suits you. And I'll show demos on how to access data from here. But for now, let's focus on dealing with our local database. So let's see. Let's get the ID. Request get parameter ID. Also, we're going to retrieve the action. Request dot get parameter action. And then we're going to have like an if statement saying, well, if create is the action, right? Then what are we going to do? Well, we have to parse that ID string into an integer. Right, we're going to parse it, integer parse the ID, and then we're going to use DAO to insert, right, to create. Well, we have to create the application instance. Let's create the application. Let's create an application instance. Application, app, new application that has what? It has this brand new. Oh wait, no ID. No, obviously we're not going to have the ID because we're going to create it. I'm sorry, we don't have an ID. So we're going to have the name. Oh, the price. We didn't get the price. Let's get the price too. So this is the price. My price. We have the action. I'm going to put the action on top because that looks like it's very important. Okay, we're going to pass the name and the price. Well, the price I need to parse it as a double, right? So let's parse it as a double. Double price as a double. I'm going to use the double dot parse double. I'm going to pass it the price. Now I have a price D as a double. There it is. Now I have an application instance that I just instantiated, and I can pass it to create in the DAO API, right? And I can pass it the app that I just created, and hopefully that will insert it into my database. Okay. So let's go back to my insert. Okay. Here's my checkers. I'm gonna do this again, right? I'm gonna refresh my JSP, make sure nothing blew up. You see no exceptions. All right. So let's try putting here checkers and try 599. Let me go to toe to make sure that it's not there already. I'm gonna refresh. No, it's not there. So let's do add. Let's click on add. There it is. Checkers made it into database. Let's see. Let's refresh. There it is. Checkers. So how did it make it into here? Well, what happened is that it refreshed, right? It passed the create action, the name, the price. It was this. We inserted it, and right after inserted it, we used the DAO to query and retrieve all the applications from the database, and they were ready there to be re-rendered. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Any questions about that? How did was inserted, and then it retrieved all the servers, right? And then it re-rendered. Okay. All right. Let's have a 5-minute break. Okay. Let's get a chance everybody to stretch, perhaps go to a bathroom or something, and then we'll continue and do the other operations that we would need. Okay. All right. Let's take a quick break. I'll come back in about 5 minutes. All right, just a second. So let me. Okay. Any questions before we break? No. Okay. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. All right. Everybody okay? Is everybody ready to continue? All right. Yiki asks, can you provide us with some web development source, such as how JSP works? What do you mean by source? You mean source code? If it's source code, resources to read, okay, books, sure. If you have done ASPs, I mean, yeah, ASP, they behave very similar to ASPs, but you know, or if you've done PHP, they're very similar, right? But yeah, I can provide some books or some references, some tutorials, some online tutorials. Although, more you're not going to be. I hope. I don't know. I don't think that you're going to be doing much more than what we're doing right now. So this might be enough. I hope. But certainly you can look at some other tutorials. Again, I don't want you to spend too much time, focusing on the UI. Right? I just want the UI to be just functional. Right? It doesn't have to look pretty. It doesn't have to look spectacular. Right? It just has to be functional. It has to, whatever use cases you describe in your projects, then, well, those have to be fulfillable through your UI, right? That you can exercise all the UIs, but it doesn't have to be, user friendly or anything like that. Obviously, if I see that somebody has put a lot of effort, certainly you can get more points for the effort that you've put into something. Obviously, yes. But certainly, if it's functional and it works, it does what it was supposed to do, right? What we agree on, then that's fine. Yeah. So simple UI is fine. Right, so I don't foresee you doing much more than what I'm showing you here. Okay. All right, but yes, I'll provide some pointers and some references that can be useful for you to play around with. Okay. All right, let's continue here. Let's see. All right, so what else do we want to be able to do? Well, we want to be able to say, we want to be able to delete things, right? We want to be able to delete an application. So perhaps here, as we're iterating, right, and as we're displaying these applications, I would like to be able to add like a delete button on here, right? So let's add a delete button on each one of these. Okay. So I'm going to use another TD here. I'm going to put another TD. Okay. And what I'm going to do is that I don't want to submit the form, right? I don't want to submit the form, but I do want to pass data. We want to pass data to ourselves, right? Because I don't want to submit the form and submit these things. I don't want to submit the name, the price, and these things, and the button, and the action, right? But I do want to pass data to myself. What we're going to do is we're going to use a hyperlink. We're going to say href points to myself, right? Applications.jsp. It passes as a query string, passes the data to ourselves, right? Including, well, the only real thing that we need is to know that the action is going to be remove. We want to remove, right? And also that the ID is of the ID that we want to remove, right? So for that, we're going to insert. I'm going to inline insert from the current app that I'm iterating over, getting the ID. So I'm going to encode the ID into the URL. There it is. My URL is done. Okay. And I'm going to put here remove or delete. Okay. So let's render that. Let's render that. Okay, there it is. It renders as a link, but we could make it render as a button too. We could paint it as a button. We can add a class here. We can say class button. It'll paint as a button. It didn't render. Why are you not rendering? Oh my goodness. I'm refreshing. Notice that I'm refreshing and the URL has a create, right? So it created all these checkers. Right, that's fine. Let me remove that. Let me remove that. Okay. Why is delete not rendering? Refresh. Huh. The class not being applied? Class. Applying class BTN button, right? BTN. href. Missing something? Am I not closing something? Delete. Interesting. Let me inspect this. Let's see if the class is there. The class is there. Why is that being rendered? BTN danger. Is that being rendered? Oh, there it is. Okay, BTN by itself doesn't render. Okay, I need to give it additional coloring. Let me color it some more. Let me color the other button, the add button. Let me add some more color to this. BTN success. That's green. There it is, green. So green for add, red for delete. Anyway, so what I want to be able to do is click on delete, and notice that the action is that it's remove and the ID is 1. If I click on this one, it's for the ID is 4. So notice that it changed to 4. If I click on that one, that's 7, right? So what I could do here is that this is what we call a controller. This over here, this little thing here is a controller, right? This starting here, right, all the way down to perhaps here, right? It's considered to be a controller. Usually, this would live in a separate, either in a servlet, or it would live in a separate class. It would do all these things, right? And what it's doing, it's allowing us to bind the UI data with the back-end data, right? With the data model, with the back-end data model. But let's keep it simple. So we're keeping it as simple as possible. I don't want to get into too much architecting web applications because, again, I want you to get going with the database. Anyway, so we're going to check remove. We're going to compare it against the action. If it is remove, then we have the ID. We're going to that's the ID, right? We're going to parse it. We're going to say int ID integer is going to parse it from the integer parse string, the ID. Now I have the ID. Now that I have the ID, I want to be able to remove it. I want to say, DAO dot remove and pass it an ID int. Now remove doesn't exist, right? It doesn't exist in our DAO. So that's how we want to use it. Right, so let's go here and create the remove. So we have create, we have select all, and let's add remove. Let's have here public void remove and then int the ID. Again, what do? We have the string, the SQL. It's going to do what? It's going to say delete from applications where the ID is equal to the parameter that we're going to pass in, right? To do that, we're going to need a connection. Connection equal get connection. And then before I forget, we're going to say close connection, right? Now that we have the connection, we're going to create a prepared statement. Prepared statement equal connection dot prepared statement SQL, and that's going to throw an exception. We're going to wrap it. Notice that there is some pattern here, right? And I'm doing this on purpose. Okay, that I'm repeatedly doing this, and once we see a pattern, we will try to find something that is generic here. Okay. That's what we developers do. That we find patterns and then we find a generalized solution to something, right? Anyway, so we have the statement. We're going to prepare the statement. We gave it the SQL. The only thing we need to do is parameterize that ID. We're going to say statement dot set integer, the first integer with the ID that we passed it, and we're going to execute that statement. We're going to say statement dot execute. Okay. All right. Let's go back to our application.jsp. It still says that it can't see it, right? But actually, let me see. Let's say dot. There it is. ID int. There we go. All right, so let's try it out. Let's go back to our database, to here, and let's refresh this. Refresh this. And if we go down here and start removing some of these, it looks like it works. It works. Remove, 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 remove. There we go. It removed. Right? It removed, and then right after it does all these things, right, it re-renders and loads everything up. Actually, this would be part of the controller too. That would be part of the controller. Okay. What else do we need to do? What else? Well, we would need to be able to update an existing application. We could use this form to update the application. Well, to do that, we need to first select the application that we want to update. So to do that, we're going to do a select, right? So for instance, let's add here another link, right? Maybe another link. Instead of a delete link, we're gonna have a select link. Let's say select, right? And the action is going to be select. Yes, and the same ID, same ID. We're going to pass saying this is the this is what we're selecting. Okay. Also, this is so let's render that. Let's render this. Oh, it doesn't fit. There it is. So there's select. Well, red. I don't like red. Let's make it not button danger. We'll say maybe warning. I think that's yellow. There it is. So if I click on this, notice that it says select 1, select 3, select 10. So what we want to be able to do is basically have an application read from the database, right? With that, we want to say something like else, right? If it's select, right, equals the action, then we want to retrieve some application from the server DAO dot select. We have a select all, but we don't want to select all. We want to select one, right? Passing an ID that we're going to parse. Right? We're going to parse it. We're going to pass it. That's the one we want to select. It'll return an application. Okay. Right. So let's do that. Let's go into our DAO and let's create a select all. So select one. So this is gonna, let's see, it's gonna be something like public. It's gonna return an application. Select one, and it takes the ID. Right. Okay. So let's see. What are we gonna do? Well, here's the application. Right. App null. And we're going to return the app. Okay. So to do that, we need a SQL statement. The SQL is going to be what? It's going to be something like select star from applications where the ID is equal to the ID that we're going to pass. Right. So we need to configure that. So we need a connection for that. So let's get a connection. Get connection, and we're going to close the connection. Close connection. Ooh, what do we forget to do here? We've got to put this in a finally, right? And here as well, let's see the get connection. What are we going to do? We're going to get a prepared statement. Prepared statement equal connection dot prepared statements. The SQL, very good. We'll put that in a try catch, and we're going to put this in a finally. Okay. Okay, the prepared statement is gonna prepare this. We need to populate that ID. How do we do that? That's very easy. Statement set integer, the first integer with the ID that we're passing. We're going to execute that query. We're going to say statement dot execute query. It's a query, but we're going to return something, a result set. Now we know that that result set is going to have only one record, hopefully, right? It's a primary key, so it has to be unique. So what we're going to do is that instead of iterating over the results of the while loop, we're going to use an if statement. We're going to say if results next, right? Meaning if there is a record, if there is such a record with that ID, right? Advance to that record, that first record. Now that you're on it, I'm going to retrieve everything, right? We're going to retrieve, well, the ID we already have, right? Hopefully the ID is the same, obviously, right? So it's going to be results dot get integer ID. We're going to have the name from the results dot get string from name, and the double the price. Okay, ID already. There's already a variable called ID, so I'm gonna use the same variable name ID. There we go. Say this is going to be results dot get double a column called price. Okay. And then I can instantiate, well, I already have app here. I'm going to use that variable app. Let's say app equal new application with the ID, the name, and the price. Right, and that's what we're going to return. Make sense? All right. Now let's get back here. Now we have this, right? Hopefully this now works. Let's see, dot select one. There it is. Oh, no, that didn't work. What's the matter? Select one. Can't be found. No? What? It's there. What do you mean you can't find it? Oh, we're passing ID int. Yeah, that's what we have to pass. Okay. Now, this application that comes back, what I want to be able to do is populate this form over here. I want to populate that form with the values of the application, right? So that it shows what we just selected. So what we should do is, instead of having the application here, I'm going to declare it out here. I'm going to declare it out here so that it's visible elsewhere. Okay. So here I'm going to make an empty application. Empty application. Oh, I already have a variable app. Okay. There we go. Right, there it is. And what I might want to do is in the application, I might want to give default names as empty string, and maybe an ID, a bogus ID of -1, right? Okay. And maybe I can use that in the JSP to properly format these two fields. Okay. Right. So what I wanted to be able to do here is that I'm going to populate this. I'm going to say, well, the value of this input field is going to be value of this input field is going to be a Java expression. It's going to say it's going to be the app dot get name. You know what? I'll do this out here. I'll do this out here. I'll say what could I do? Let's see. Well, let me see. Let me see what this does. Let me see what this does. app name, and the price would be app.getPrice, right? Okay. What is it complaining about? Oh, I didn't close this. There we go. Okay. Let's see what that does. Okay. Run that. Oops. Blows up. Duplicate local variable app. Really? Where? I thought I removed it. Oh, over here. Over here, right? It has a same name. App. So I don't know. Let's call this A maybe, or app, like that. In JSPs you can't use refactoring, unfortunately. Okay, let's try that. All right, there it is. Let me see if I click here. There it is. It's selecting. You see how it's selecting? It's changing as I select. Okay. So the last thing that I would like to be able to do is update. Now, once I have it here, and I want to change checkers to checkers, maybe 3D checkers, right? And I need like a button that allows me to like update, right? So let's do that. Let's add another button here, right? Called update. Okay. Maybe let's color it some other color, primary. That's blue. And the action is update. Update. Okay. But when I update, I'm going to need one more thing, right? I'm going to need to not only pass the name of the application and the new price of the application, I need to pass also the ID of the existing application that I am submitting. So somewhere I need to put the ID. All right. So let's where do I put that? What I could do, I could put it in a hidden field. I could say type equal hidden field, right? Whose name is the ID, and the value is the current application, right? Up that get ID, and let me close that. Okay. All right. So let's see if that works. So let's refresh this. Okay, so let's see if I change this to 3D checkers and say update. Let's look at the URL. What's going to do? So I click on update. All right. What does it say? It says applications ID is 10. The new name is 3D checkers. The price is $5.99, and the action is to update. Okay. All right. Okay. Maybe the price. What we could do is the price. No, actually, all right. That's good. All right. So let's do the if statement for that. We say else if the this is update and says equals action. I need the ID, parse the ID. I need, what else do I need? I need a new application, right? That has all the new data, right? From where? From the new name and the price, right? Oh well, parse with the price parsed, right? And now I need some way of saying, DAO, I want to update an application whose ID is ID, and the new values are inside of this app. Okay, so let's go back to the DAO, right, and let's create that update. Public void update that takes the ID, that takes the new application, and then says, okay, well, to do that, I'm going to need a SQL that looks something like this: update applications, set the name to a placeholder, right? Then what else? Name, price, the placeholder, right? Where the ID is placeholder. Right, so this is the ID of the application we want to the record we want to update, and these are the various fields that we want to update, the name and the price. Obviously, we're not going to change the ID. Okay. All right. To do that, we need a connection. We're going to say that we're going to get the connection, and then we're going to close the connection. Right. What are we going to do with the connection? We're going to create a prepared statement. We're going to say connection dot prepare statements with SQL. That throws an exception. We're going to catch that exception. We're going to populate those values. Statement dot set a string for the first one is the name, the app dot get name. We have that. Then we're going to do set the double, second one, to the app dot get price, right? And then the last one is statement dot set integer for the third one of the ID that is being passed in, right? And then what we do is we say statement dot execute, and then it executes, and it should update that particular statement. Make sense? And we're going to do finally, we'll put the close connection in here. Okay. All right, let's go back to the JSP. Any questions so far? All right. Okay. Dot, let's see, update, there it is. So ID int app. All right. Okay, let's try this again. Let's refresh. Okay, we're selecting. Let's change checkers to 3D checkers. Space, update, there it is, it changed. You see that? And if we say tic-tac-toe, we'll have 4D tic-tac-toe. Awesome. You see how it's working? And to do, we can change it to ta-da. Update, and there it changed. Okay? All right, so what we've seen here is an application that it provides the basic CRUD operations, right? It allows you to do the very basic create, right? The create, the read, right? The update, the update over here, update, and then the delete, right? The remove. Those are the 4 operations that you would typically need for each, for each table. Obviously, well, I always call it 4 plus 1, right? Because there's the read. You have 2 versions of read, right? You have the select all that selects either all the records or a subset, a collection of records that might meet some certain criteria. And then you have another one that allows you to retrieve just one, right? It's the select one. Okay. What's missing here, for instance, is what if applications are made up of other things, right? If you have one-to-many relationships between an application and other things, right? So how do you manage the relationship between those 2 things, right? So typically you would have also DAOs that may allow you to manage those relationships. Later on, when we talk about object relational mappings, right, we'll see that the ORM can handle all those relationships automatically. What we're going to do is that we're going to create a couple more of these DAOs, right? And what you'll notice is that they're all very similar to each other, right? And the only thing that changes is from one DAO to the next might be that the return types are different, right? The table names are different, obviously, right? Excuse me. The fields are different, obviously, right? But they all have the same kind of feel, the same kind of structure, right? They all have a create, they all have some select all, they all have a remove, and so after doing 3 or 4 of these, right, you start asking yourself, these all look the same, Could we create a generic solution to this, right? What if this select statement, for instance, just like this is parameterized? Well, what if these things could be parameterized as well? The name of the table, couldn't that be a parameter, right? And then I could create some generic select one that would work for all tables, right? Right, but then you would say, well, what do I do with these fields, right? These fields are different for each table. Well, would it be nice if we could also parameterize the list of attributes? If we parameterize the list of attributes, well, again, we could create some generic algorithm, right, that could iterate over a list of parameters or a list of attributes, right, that would generically generate these getters, right? Get strings, get doubles, whatnot, right? So that's what the ORM is going to do for us, right? It's going to generalize, right, the access to the database by providing this magical mappings of an application. Here's an application class, right? And if you look at an application, you say, hey, that's a table that maps to a table. It maps to a table that is called applications, and it has fields, ints, ID, name, and price. Magically generate for me all these DAOs. Why do I have to write it? Let a compiler or a tool write them for me. This is the only thing you have to know, right? The name of the class, the name of the fields, right? And they map very, very close, right, to the name of this table, right? And it maps to the name of the fields. Perhaps I could generate a generic solution that would write the DAO for me. Okay, just like over here, how do we generate these gets and setters and getters and these constructors? How do we generate them? We went to source and we did, generate setters, getters. Wouldn't it be great if we had an option here that as you stand at a particular class, right, you just say source generate DAO object? Wouldn't that be cool? Well, that's exactly what entity frameworks do for us, right? These tools, they can go both ways, right? They can start from a class, given a class, they can generate the DAOs and also generate the applicable tables, the schema that this class would map to, or vice versa. Given the schema, right? Given the script that generates the table, there it is, right? Given this, it could reverse engineer the database and generate for us not only the DAO, right? It could generate this Java object, generate the Java object. So we could go both ways. So that's what entity framework and JPA, when we'll look at it in a couple of weeks, that's what it does for us, right? It's able to do all this automatically for us. Okay. Now, my preference is that you in your project you use some kind of entity framework, because again, it's better to use some tool that can generate all these things for you, and without we could very easily make a mistake designing this DAO. The architecture might not be nice. For instance, one of the things that are horrendous here is that this prepared statement is being created, right, and then thrown away, right? Prepared statements are meant to be reused, right? They're meant to be compiled once and then reused often. Another thing here is that I'm opening this connection and then I'm throwing it away, right? And getting connections is very, very expensive, right? Going out to a database and saying, give me a connection, that's very expensive, right? So throwing away a connection, right? When I could be reusing the same connection, later on, right, for selecting or reading or whatnot. That's what infrastructures provide for us that can handle these things in a better, more efficient way. And we'll talk about all those issues, right? Many the new versions of these frameworks that talk to databases, what they do is that the way they work is that they don't work with an individual connection, but they work with a pool of connections, right? That are created when the servers boot, and they keep them around for the entirety of, as long as the server is running, you have these open connections ready to go, all configured, ready to go. And when you ask for a connection, very much like this, get a connection from not like this, but from the framework, get a connection from this pool called a data source. There's very little lag between getting the connection, because the connection has already been created, has been there sitting waiting for you to ask for it. And then when you no longer, when you close it or when you release it, it doesn't actually destroy the connection, right? It just goes back to the pool, ready to be used by someone else, right? By multiple threads, right? And this makes the performance much better, much faster, much more efficient. Also, many of these servers can be configured to throttle, right? So that as the load of the server of the database grows throughout the day, perhaps towards night when people go back home and start browsing and whatnot, right? It can throttle and can create. If 100 connections was not enough, it could ask for more connections, right? And it can grow and shrink and adapt to the load of the server. They can be shared. They can be amongst multiple threads. So we'll look at that's called connection pooling using data sources. Most servers support these features that allow them to adapt as the load changes over time. What else? Let's see. Any questions? All right. Was this helpful? Let me stop sharing here. How do I? You are screen sharing. Okay, stop. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad this helped. Yeah, I hope that this can get you going. Again, I'm trying to make it as easy for you to get started. So there was some questions about, as you know, I teach a section 2 right before yours, and there was some interest of some students perhaps wanting to attend that section instead or in addition to this one. I'm not sure. So I wanted to open it up for the audience to see what are the thoughts. I mean, ideally, obviously, would be to bring together both section and be running at the same time. I think that's unrealistic. I'm pretty sure you have other commitments. You're I'm saying most of you work. I'm guessing that's the reason you are coming to a class from 6 to 9. So I have no problems of running this second again from 9 to midnight for me. I enjoy this. I love this topic, and certainly it lets me polish this and work it more and practice it better, for additional presentations. But again, if you have some of you perhaps would want to come to the earlier session, would leave available more. It will allow other people to participate. If you've seen that we're running low on connections and people participating simultaneously in these broadcasts. So I wanted to open up. What does the audience say? If you want, maybe you can unmute and let me know what you think.
So this is Doyle. In case it helps, I got the feeling most of the students don't work. I mean, I guess I'm not speaking from personal experience. I work, and that's why I do the 6 to 9. But in talking to the people in Seattle the day I was in the classroom, I think most people were full-time students. I've only met a couple other people, maybe 2 or 3 other people that work in the Seattle section. But maybe the other students can talk about that.
Okay. I mean, what I could possibly do is share the screen and do the presentation, and send the invitation to all of you a little earlier. I guess it would be from 3 to 6 for you, and see who joins. If those that can't make it, obviously I would still run both presentations. If I see that perhaps less and less people come to the later section and that more and more can attend the earlier session, then we can reconsider at a later date. But I think it's better to do both and make sure that that everybody is served. How far ahead is the other class? Well, actually, we were able to get farther in this web application farther than the other class. The other class, the first half of the presentation of the lecture, I did I did go over a little bit about select statements, which I did not go over today with you, but I wanted you to get the full full application running. In the other section, I only got about 3/4 of the way. So you're actually ahead in the web application example demo, but you're a little behind just one set of slides. So it will be very easy to synchronize both sections. So I think by next week, both presentations will be exactly the same. Okay. So anyone else want to chime in about coming to the earlier class?
Hi, Professor. This is Preeti here.
Hi, Preeti.
So I think I'll be joining 3 o'clock class.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to try that.
Okay. I'll send a poll just to get a feeling on how many people might want to come earlier. Again, I'm going to keep running both of them for the foreseeable future, and we'll see how it goes.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah.
All right then. I think anything else? I'm pretty much done for tonight.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor.
All right then. Thank you very much, and we'll meet again. We'll meet up again next week. Okay. All right. Take care. Thank you. Bye.